Welcome back to Farm and Ham, everyone. We are in the middle of a drought and it is not looking pretty. But before we get into that conversation, let's move some cows. Next pasture if they want to go. Cow just rear-ended my tripod and broke it, so. So the cows are now in their new pasture for the day. And this is actually one of our better pastures we have left at the moment. This field, it's so small, we can only keep the cows in here for one day at a time. And this field is kind of proof that daily moves really improve your pastures. We've been doing one-day grazings in this field for approximately, I don't know, 4 years. And you can see this field, we've still got some green. The fescue is still green, the clover is still sort of green, which is great. We've got some Bermuda mixed in, so that's probably what the cows are eating right now. But the fact that this field is still green and has had the same amount of rain as all the other fields, that tells me something. It's holding on to moisture a little bit better than the majority of our other fields. So we have a number of these fields that are one-day grazes, but this is the one that's shown the most improvement. If you want to see what most of the pastures look like, they look like this. All the grass is dead. There's a couple green things of clover, but the majority of the clover is brown and shriveled up. Cows don't like eating it, of course. I don't like feeding it to them because they're not happy about it, but we are to the point we don't have rain for 6 weeks in the middle of the summer. We're running out of other grass to give them. So today's video is going to be about droughts because we're in the middle of one, hopefully towards the end of one, but based on the 10-day forecast, we may not be. It is currently July 10th, and we've gotten about 1/10 of an inch of rain in the last 6 weeks. Our average temperature during those 6 weeks has been over 90. We've had a number of days that were 100, 101, 102. So we have not had ideal growing conditions. Some people 30 miles west of us, even 30 miles south of us, some of those guys got close to a ½ an inch or maybe more than ½ an inch in the last rain that we got, only 1/10. So they may not be as bad off as we are. I know far northern Missouri, they're in the situation we were this spring. They just kept getting rain and rain and rain. I know some guys up there can't even get hay cut because they have rain coming down every couple days. That is not the situation that we are in our area in southern Missouri. And I know there's a number of other areas across the country that are dealing with the same thing. So even though we haven't gotten that much rain in the last 6 weeks, we still have enough pasture to last us about about a month, I'm hoping. But once again, with our temperatures in the upper 90s and the lower 100s, the forage we do have is probably gonna dry up and get crispy pretty quick. The clover is pretty much dried up in the majority of the pastures. The fescue is starting to dry up. It's still green, but it's dry. And the Bermuda is still green, but just because it's green does not mean it's growing. Without any rain, our pastures are not able to recover like they should after we graze them, which means at some point in our pasture rotation, we're gonna get back to where we started grazing, and those fields look like this. There's not a whole lot there. And when the cows get back to this pasture, there won't be anything for them to eat. So since we are in the middle of a drought, let's talk about some strategies that we are potentially going to use to keep us profitable or at least break even this year. So the first strategy that we have already started to put to use is to sell some cows. First on the list of cows to sell is cull cows. If you guys remember the last couple videos, I've been selling a couple cull cows here and there, and that's before we are in a drought. So that's always one thing we try to do. Sell your cull cows before you have to sell cows. That way you're not in the same boat as everyone else, hauling cows at the same week. Cow prices are down. No one gets any money for their cull cows. So get rid of your cull cows first. It's better to get rid of them before everyone else is. That way you actually get something for them. And then start selling the cows that maybe they're not performing as well as the others. The calves are always growing a little bit slower, things like that. You hate to sell a good cow that's producing a calf every year, but sometimes you just have to. Second strategy we have not actually used in any time recently, but it is something we have up our sleeve if we need to use it. And that's weaning calves off early. Once again, we don't have a whole lot of spring-born calves on the farm. Most of our calves are born in the fall. So our fall calves were sold in beginning of June. Yeah, beginning of June. And so our spring-born calves, right now, they're just about 300 pounds, maybe some close to 400, but probably in 300-pound range. Once your calves hit about 350 pounds, you can wean them off early once they're a number of months old. And once they're weaned, get rid of them. You don't have the pasture to raise them on. So sell your calves. So not only do you have less calves to feed, forage to, your cows, since they aren't producing milk, they're not eating as much. So a lactating cow is eating a whole lot more than a cow that's maintaining. So our cows that are going to calve in the fall, they're eating a whole lot less than our cows that are nursing calves right now. So you may be able to stretch what little forage you do have a little longer if you get rid of your calves and wean them off early. The third strategy, which is actually our last resort this year, is feeding hay. The reason why it's our last resort this year is because hay is so expensive at $65 a bale. If we start feeding in July and have nothing left for winter feeding, we're going to be up creek without a paddle. Maybe you have your own hay equipment, you cut and bale your own hay, and you have plenty left over. You can get by with feeding some in the summer and winter. You may not be that bad off at this point in a drought, but for people like us who buy all of our own hay, or we have a neighbor come and cut and bale, it just gets too expensive to feed hay in the summer and winter. At this point in the year, we do have a couple hundred bales in the barn already. About 70 of them were from last year, and then the rest were all from this year. Since feeding a bunch of hay in the summer is not really an option for us, pretty much our main way to deal with this drought at the moment would be to sell cows if we don't get any rain in the next month. So in my short lifetime, we have experienced a couple droughts here on the farm since I can remember. 2017 was the latest one. That one was sort of a minor drought. We had to sell about 50 cows, I think. 2012 was probably the worst one I can remember. At that point, I only owned like 3 cows. So it did not affect me that much, but my dad, I know he had to sell a whole lot more than 50 cows. It was almost probably close to half the herd at the time. So that was a pretty big drought, and I know that drought was pretty widespread across the nation. And then I also sort of remember one in like 2007 or 8 or 9. I can't remember which year it was. That was another minor one, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the 2012. But I guess we can kind of look at the bright side. If there is a bright side for droughts, it's that long term it may help cattle prices. When droughts are extremely localized, it doesn't really change cattle prices at all, maybe in your area, but not nationally. So for anyone that was in the cattle business in 2014 and 2015, those are the highest cattle prices we had ever seen in the business, and that was because of the 2012 drought. A bunch of people sold their cows in 2012. 2013 was a rebuilding year. People were trying to rebuild their herds, which means they kept back heifer calves. So not only were there less calves born that could be taken to the sale barn, a lot of those farmers were keeping their heifers back, which, since there weren't that many calves available to buy, the prices skyrocketed. We saw amazing prices. A lot of farmers made money those 2 years. And if farmers weren't making money, they were doing something wrong. Because there were times where a 350-pound calf was bringing $1,500, which is insane. Right now you can't even get a 700-pound calf to bring that much. So prices were extremely high. A lot of people made a lot of money those 2 years. I don't know of anyone complaining about cattle prices during that time. Do I expect this drought to be another 2012 where cattle prices will jump up in the next couple of years? I highly doubt it, because as far as I know, the drought isn't really that widespread. I know southern Missouri is classified as a moderate drought area right now. I know West Texas and I think a portion of western Kansas are in a severe or extreme drought condition. I know I've seen a number of Facebook videos of guys hauling their cows in from Texas to the sale barn because they're in a pretty rough situation over there right now. Is it as widespread? I don't think so. Will it affect cattle prices? I kind of doubt it, but it might help a little bit in the next couple of years. I wouldn't wish a drought on any farmer, but once again, if there is a bright side, it's that maybe in a couple of years the calf market will be high enough it makes up for it. So long story short, it might help cattle prices in the long run, but in the short term, it can bankrupt a lot of farmers that are already struggling right now with feed and fuel prices, which isn't ever a good thing. So guys, at this point, all we can do is pray for rain and hope it comes. Hopefully I'll have some better news for you in the next video. But until then, everyone take care, have a good week, and do a little rain dance for us.